if you post every day about something that you have a bunch of ideas about, people are eventually going to listen to you, or at least that's how it worked out for me. It's a lot easier to form your personal brand when it's actually personal, when it's
Mhm.
that you just talk about something that interests you. I was not trying to create a brand when I did. I just found myself writing every day. I was super, super into my job, super interested in learning more and more about it. And I had this realization when I became a Scrum Master that it was kind of a good fit for me because I had already been living my life in a similar way. And a couple weeks later, somebody reached out to me and said, I really love your Scrumify brand. And I
Mhm.
had no idea that I had a brand until that person said that to me.
Oh,
It's very much that you just have to get comfortable with talking a lot.
hi, I'm Maria, and this is the Agile State of Mind. Welcome, and welcome to the Agile Conversations, where I interview Agile people on personal branding. And today, as you see, I have with me Jeremy Randall. Hey, Jeremy,
Hey, Maria,
how are you?
I'm good. Thanks for having me on.
Oh, I'm very happy to have you. I wanted actually to talk to you about the personal brand. You were one of the people that came to my mind when I thought about the series, because I think you are creating your brand from scratch. Jeremy, for those who don't know him, is a Scrum Master. And he also has a blog or a series of articles that previously were called Scrumify Your Life. Is
Yeah,
that true?
that's right.
And then it's interesting because you're from the United States, but now you live in France, which is
Mhm.
also like a cultural thing. Interesting. Like I'm from Poland, but I live in Spain, so we also deal with that cultural differences. And it's interesting because for me, you are the person that really did it on his own. For example, I know a lot of people who collaborate with serious Scrum, like I did, and then we start getting to know other people, the community, just because we are on the Slack there and we help each other. And with you, I think you did it. Maybe I'm mistaken, but I see that you did it on your own from scratch.
I
So
didn't
that's
know
why.
anybody.
Exactly. And it really helps that people who have a lot of followers on LinkedIn give you a like or give you a comment, and other people, they draw attention to your content, right? And you didn't do that. You did it all on your own. That's why I would like to talk to you, because I'm seeing that you have 13,000 followers on LinkedIn, which is a lot. And you're quite seen. I could say that I know you from LinkedIn, and I feel like you are there a lot and I can see you a lot, and you are a personality already. So I would like to talk about this today. And yeah, let's maybe start with how did it all start? When did you decide to be a Scrum Master, or go
Yeah.
out of only like having a day job to putting yourself out there?
Yeah, sure. Actually, it's kind of funny. I wasn't planning to become like a personality on the internet
Mhm.
or anything. I actually went to LinkedIn because I was struggling a little bit as a Scrum
Mhm.
Master. My team was running into problems that I didn't really know how to approach. And I did a lot of searches. I watched your channel. I read a lot of articles. And then I started looking on LinkedIn and realized I could just ask questions there. So I started making my own posts a little more than a year ago. And the first few were asking, how do I deal with this kind of situation? And nobody answered at first. So I just started tagging people that I noticed already talked about Scrum and agility a lot. And then they started responding, which was really cool.
Yeah.
Probably when I first saw that happen, uh, I I think I followed up for like a week. Every day I had a different question about something that I was failing at the moment, needed help on. And then after that amount of time, someone tagged me in one of their question posts. And I didn't really understand why at the time because I didn't feel like I had a bunch of opinions that I'd already put out there. But apparently, I was just showing up in people's feeds. And
Mm.
so they also saw me as a name and wanted to know what I thought about something. So I jumped on it, and I realized that I had something to contribute because even though at the time I had only been a scrum master for about a year, the people that were asking questions that I could actually contribute to answers on were those who had been a scrum master for even less time than me. I didn't think of myself as super experienced, a very young scrum master, but I still had some experiences and some ideas that would help people who were a step or two behind me already. That's kind of where it came from because once people started responding and I was now putting my own ideas out about what I had learned so far, the response was really great. And I just sort of started to naturally pick people up. And if you post every day about something that you have a bunch of ideas about, people are eventually going to listen to you, or at least that's how it worked out for me.
That's great. And that's also great that you did it with, one could say, so little experience. You have been a developer before, right?
Yeah, I
Before
was a
being a Scrum
developer
Master.
before I became a Scrum
So
Master.
it wasn't your first contact with Scrum, we could say.
Actually,
Oh,
it was.
okay.
So I worked for about 2.5 years on a team that was not really using much of an approach at all. They were neither
Mm.
agile nor strictly waterfall, just kind of winging it and hoping to get things done. And then I switched into my second developer position ever with a much, much bigger company. They placed me on a team that had just a couple months prior been told, we're going to use Scrum, but the team, while they had a product owner and they had a whole mess of developers, they hadn't been given any budget for a scrum master. So a few months in, it was really, really obvious that the team was struggling with a bunch of things. And I didn't know how to help them, but I knew that they were problems. And I had read enough about Scrum in that amount of time so I could understand what I was supposed to be doing in my job to realize that we were missing a really key component of the team. So I offered to take on the Scrum Master role. My manager allowed me to do it at like 10% of my time, and the team just embraced it. Apparently they liked what I brought,
Mhm.
and over the course of that first year, I went from being 100% a developer to 100% a scrum master, a little bit at a time.
Okay. That's a great story. And that also shows, because there is always this, should we even have a full-time Scrum Master in a team? Does it really matter? And you are
Yes.
living proof that it does. That's great. When we are thinking about creating our personal brand, it's so much important that we don't feel that we need to like limit ourselves, because there is this, I think it's a bit of imposter syndrome connected with other things, when people feel like, oh, I need to know more to get out there. I need to learn more.
Yes.
I need to do this course. Without the Scrum Master certification, I shouldn't even say I'm a Scrum Master. Da 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 da. So we impose all those limitations, and you
Mhm.
felt, and I feel like you just went out there and without even thinking about this.
I mean, to be honest, I felt all those same things. And if I had come into it with the idea of, I'm going to go out and make myself an authority on Scrum, even if I was saying an authority on like your first steps into becoming a Scrum Master, which I probably knew enough to be able to talk
Mhm.
about that. If I had just come in and said that I was going to do that, the imposter syndrome would have been enormous. It would have been a really high hurdle to clear to actually make content and try to network and get people to listen to me. I think that it's a lot easier to form your personal brand when it's actually personal, when it's
Mhm.
that you just talk about something that interests you instead of picking something that you want to be known for. And in fact, I was not trying to create a brand when I did. I just found myself writing every day. I was super, super into my job, super interested in learning more and more about it. And I had this realization when I became a Scrum Master that it was kind of a good fit for me because I had already been living my life in a similar way. So that was something that I talked about a lot, how I
Mhm.
kind of took an agile approach to things that I did in my personal life, not just at work. And that's actually how I got to the Scrumify brand. I think that my first Scrumify post was in response to somebody saying, this job search is really hard and talking about all the things that they have to do. And their organization just looked like a mess. And so I said, oh, well, why don't we just scrumify your job search? We'll take
Mhm.
these pieces of the Scrum structure, all the events that we have in a sprint, and we'll just align them with the things you need to do so that you have a really easy to understand order of things that you're going to do. And you're not trying to just tackle the whole thing at once. Um, and then I think, I don't know, I talked about scrumifying your job search and then scrumifying your resume and scrumifying I don't know, lots of little things that kind of went with the job search because it's LinkedIn. That's what everybody's talking about. And a couple of weeks later, somebody reached out to me and said, I really love your Scrumify brand. And I
Mhm.
had no idea that I had a brand until that person said that to me.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah. So at that point, once I knew I had a brand, I just leaned into it
Mhm.
and I wrote more and more about it. And I sort of made the whole personal agility thing kind of my lane. I feel that that was easier for me because people had already noticed me talking about it, even when I
Mhm.
was just speaking sort of casually.
That's awesome, and it goes very much into what I already interviewed Chris Stone and Maarten Dalmijn about the personal branding. How do you
Yeah.
go about it? And they all started with find your voice, do what you like, find your passion. And in your case, it actually evolved on its own, right? It wasn't like you put a lot of thought into it and like, okay, so because that's the next one. Like, okay, so until I know what I'm passionate about, I will not start. And it's like, no, just start and maybe it will just emerge, right?
It's very much that you just have to get comfortable with talking a lot, putting yourself out there in whatever way
Do
you
you
want to
think
do.
it's easier for the Americans than other people?
Are you calling us big talkers?
Oh, I'm just curious here.
Uh, I think every American expects that they will be famous one day, so it might be.
Oh, I love that. We are talking, and I'm thinking you are actually first Well, Chris is also a native speaker. We could say he's British.
Yeah, yeah,
So
sure.
the accent, it's also like he has it easy. He has the accent. But
Yeah.
you are the first American. And I was thinking actually, and just aside from prejudices, I think it is cultural and cultural differences, how you are raised up, brought up, how at school you are presenting. When we see all these American movies and everybody's always presenting something at school, and in
Yeah.
in Poland we were like, just please don't ask me, like I will never present anything. So I think just getting yourself out there and speaking publicly it's so much easier probably for you guys, and you just push through. I think it's that, and I'm sorry if somebody will feel like I'm super prejudiced here, because what I'm trying to say is more that, like, for example, my son, I see they have to do one, it's called conferencia a year, and he's
Mhm.
6. So they have to go there to in front of the class and present a subject of their own choosing. But they have to
Mhm.
do it in front of the whole class. And I'm thinking, this is so great. This is something I've never done when I was younger. And we
Mhm.
never had to do this, to present something so and make it interesting so that people actually listen to you, right? So do you think there
Yeah.
might be, when you actually you work in Europe, so you deal with people from other cultures, do you see there is maybe a bit of difference how
There's
we
definitely a difference in like the American education system versus the European ones that I've seen. I don't know if it's entirely that. I mean, we are very much taught that we are every one of us is our own special snowflake, and we should get out there and be really individualistic and proud of ourselves, and we can do anything. I'm not
Oh,
saying
well,
that
that's quite a lot
we're
already,
not
right?
taught that. Yeah.
I would say that's quite a lot.
It is quite a lot. The thing is, I don't think that it requires that you're somebody who is good at public speaking in order to do something like what you and I have done. Because
Mhm.
when I speak to the masses on LinkedIn, it's just me and my keyboard. They're not there giving me the feedback right then. They're
Right.
not watching over my shoulder as I write it. So I really don't feel a ton of pressure. If I write for, I don't know, half an hour, and then I look at what I write and I don't like it, then I'll just scrap it and start over. There's no like pressure to make everything perfect. And when you record, you're talking into a camera. It's not like there's people sitting there like watching like this.
True.
So I really feel anybody can do this. You don't need the ability to talk to big groups. You need the ability to hit post and then turn your computer off and not be too concerned about what the feedback is that comes directly to you.
Exactly. I think that is a very important part because you will, in the end, I think what we are afraid mostly, apart from public speaking, is the how we are received
Yeah.
and what people will think. And people also tell me, Maria, don't you hate your voice? Like, I always hate my voice when I hear it.
I love your
People,
voice.
oh, thank you. But people have this tendency to hate their own voice. And because it's different when you are inside and outside. And
Yeah.
but I, for example, don't have that problem. I think at the beginning, maybe, but now I'm like, I'm laughing at my own jokes. It's like, I'm so funny. But I think sometimes I literally do that. But and then sometimes I forget what I said and I'm like, oh, I should have asked that. And then I see that I asked it and I'm like, wow, cool. So you can even surprise yourself, right? When once you do this.
Yeah.
But I think the key is that what you said at the beginning, it's not you're trying to be the master and express some kind of knowledge that wise man, right? It's more
Mhm.
like I'm also one of those who wants to learn and I also want to share what I learned. So if you're going there from this position of equal or even like, hey, I'm also here to learn, it's different than, okay, I'm here just to share my knowledge and you should listen. Then the
Yeah.
feedback you get, I remember once I got like some feedback on my article about Kanban. It was 3 years ago. And that was my, like, I don't think I know Kanban as much as I know Scrum.
Mhm.
So already I was in this position of like a bit vulnerability. Like, okay,
Mhm.
I'm writing about Kanban. I actually wrote Scrum versus Kanban, not to write about Kanban directly. It took me a long time to write about only Kanban and do an episode on Kanban. And I remember somebody like trashed it. And I was like, okay, breathe. I took some of the feedback. It was some of the things were like, oh, look, I never thought about it this way. And this person opened my eyes to some stuff. But to others, I was like, well, I agree. Maybe Kanban shouldn't be put in like a box that it's more for support, but that's how people use it. And I'm sorry that if you want like a easy answer, that's my easy answer. So I think it's
Mhm.
also that it's like in Agile, it's so easy to make like the wrong step. It's
You mean that
just
it's easy to say something that someone will attack when you're in
yeah,
the agile?
yeah.
Absolutely it is. And it's such an easy place for people to come after you
Hmm.
because so little is truly like nailed down factual stuff. It's all context based. Every team is different. Every situation is different. Every enterprise is different. Every project is different. It doesn't matter. There is no one answer, but there will always be a troll in the comments section. However,
Yeah.
you have to think of it like it's Yelp, right? If you think about a restaurant that you really like and you look them up on Yelp or Google reviews or whatever, you're going to see a bunch of comments. They're like, this was terrible, worst food I've ever eaten, awful service, right? And
Mhm.
yet their score is 4.8 stars. And that's because when people are happy, it's very quick. It's easy for them to just say, I liked it and give you your 5 stars. And that's what happens when people give you a thumbs up on LinkedIn or they like your video on YouTube or whatever. And then the people that don't like it and have something to say about it, they will seem loud, but they're so the minority. And you just have to
Mhm.
keep that in mind to not let it get to you.
Yeah, that's I think a very good comment and advice for those who want to start and get yourself out there and then look out for the hater, but the hater is not the majority usually. And I think it's also very common for different cultures have different ways of also receiving. And I
for sure.
can see that I was actually expecting much more hate. And there's a lot of to hate about me. Like people tell me sometimes, I hate your voice. Like I can. There was a comment and somebody wrote, I can't stand this. I can't, and I'm like, well, it's what it is. I can change my voice. And I've also see, I feel like we mature in this respect to the hate and to like bad negative comments, because it's like, well, what can I do about my voice? It is what it is. Some people like it, some people don't, and that's it.
Mhm.
And there's also a lot of other things. Somebody said, just buy a microphone. And I'm like, okay, this one is actually good. I listened to my episodes when I didn't have the mic, and like, that's actually maybe not the best way to put it, but the message got through. And then you mature as well. You like, I'm thinking sometimes about the celebrities, how much hate they get, and how much
Mhm.
you have to deal with. So if you get like 4 bad comments in a year, it's like, I can deal.
That's pretty good. That's
Right?
pretty good. Regarding the sound of your voice thing, because I think that a lot of people have a really similar concern. I know this won't apply to you because I don't think you have a sister. I have a younger brother
Mhm.
whose voice sounds exactly the same as mine, right? And you don't hear your own voice through the air. You hear it in your
Yeah.
head, and then when you hear yourself recorded, it sounds different. But my voice sounds exactly like my brother's voice.
Really?
Anytime I say something or I listen back to something that I've recorded, I just close my eyes and I imagine it as my brother, and it's totally fine
Oh,
because it
wow.
makes perfect sense to me. I'm like, "Oh, yeah. You know what? That's something he would say too."
Oh, okay. So this is for those who have brothers or sisters.
Yeah, if you have somebody that you've been told you sound like, just imagine it's them saying it.
Okay, that's good. And what about the channels? What could you share? Because I think you do much more than just, you actually moved to Substack, I think, when everybody moved. Everybody, I'm saying, because I know that a lot of people at some point moved from Medium to Substack. Could you speak a little
Right.
about the channels you use? Like, do you use Slack? Do you use some communities? What do you actually
Um,
do?
Yeah, sure. So I feel like I have a lot of irons in the fire most of the time. So I'm on LinkedIn. I do have a Substack, although I didn't have to do the change because I've
Mhm.
only been doing this about a year and everybody was starting the switch to Substack just as I came in. So I have zero Medium articles. Don't
Oh,
worry, you don't have to
okay.
go track them down. Um, all my stuff is on Substack. And then I have a Discord channel that I help people out with Scrum and Agile questions in. I have the books, I have a course, I have things like that. But it's mostly like if people are trying to read what I have to say, it's going to be on Substack. And if they want to talk to me personally, it's usually LinkedIn.
I think LinkedIn really got big, right? When it comes to this kind of
Yeah. Well, especially
personalities.
for Agile, I think that LinkedIn is the home of Agile.
Hmm.
Um, because there have been apparently many attempts to create a site that brings all of the Agilists together, but I don't think any of them stuck the way that this did. It's interesting
Right.
though, because it
Yeah.
seems like it revolves around personalities rather than groups.
True. A desperate attempt to revive the groups. And I think the
Yeah.
groups are elsewhere. You have Discord, Serious Scrum has Slack, and then there are a lot of Slack channels as well where people gather and meet. And there's the meetup, of
Yeah.
course. But I wonder, what would you say to all those? Like, we all in the end work for somebody, and then we have this like side gig of putting
Mhm.
ourselves out there.
Yeah. So the first thing I would say is no matter who you are and no matter what it is that you're doing for your day job, you should probably be building your own personal brand. And I say this especially talking mostly to people who are on LinkedIn, because while I love the conversations we have about agility and how to do different things with different teams and all that, the majority of conversation on there revolves around finding your next job, right? And so
Yeah.
you don't have to be building your personal brand in order to have this side hustle or build your own business or anything like that. It should be about whatever your goal is. And especially if you're on LinkedIn, it can be about finding your next job. I think that the things to really keep in mind are who you are trying to get the attention of. How do I want to say this? I think that the things to keep in mind here are who will help you achieve your goals and what do people want to hear from you? And those can be two completely different things. So, for instance, when I was talking at the beginning of my tenure on LinkedIn, I was talking a lot about the personal agility stuff, and I really liked that. And then about a month into my time there, as I seemed to pick up a number of followers, I got to like 1,000 followers or something like that, and I said, oh, I'm going to celebrate. I'm going to have an open call, an open video call, and I'll just have a conversation with people and talk about whatever they want to talk about. And I thought that it was going to be 100% talk about personal agility. And instead, 30 people showed up, and they were all school teachers from Atlanta, Georgia. Not literally every single one, but the majority of them were. And they all wanted to know, how can I, as a school teacher, transition to become a Scrum Master, which was not something I was trying to talk about at all. Right. But I
Mhm.
realized then that this was somebody who found what I was talking about valuable and wanted some information that I could probably help them with. And if I talked about that, if I built this brand up on top of the idea of, hey, you're a teacher, you're interested in Scrum, here are some steps that you might follow to find your way into this kind of career, then I would get a lot of people to listen to me. And I could still sneak in my message about, hey, here's how you can do Scrum in your personal life. Here's how you can have an agile mindset in everything that you do, which is what I really cared about. Right.
Mhm.
Later on, that became that, I wrote a short book about personal agility. I helped some teachers train to become Scrum Masters, and some of them have been hired. And this became my pitch that got a ton of people to look at me. But that also raised me up in like search rankings so that when people in my area who don't even speak the same language that I'm posting in, because I live in France, when they search for Scrum Masters, I come up right at the top. So
Mm.
the goal I was actually trying to achieve at this point is find my next job. And talking about this completely separate thing, building this brand made me somebody that people wanted. And I found it much, much easier than I expected it
Mm.
to be to get my next job.
Wow, that's a great story, and I think that's exactly you just pinned what we are do there. It's how to make sure we keep in the market and we are attractive as future employees, right?
Yeah.
And that's actually very interesting that you are talking about agile, but you're actually reaching people who have nothing to do with agile, right?
Yeah. Yeah. More people than I would have thought
Yeah.
that are in my network now are not agilists, not scrum masters, not developers, in no way
No
related to it.
technology related at
Yeah.
all. Yeah, that's awesome.
That's right.
And that's super for me it's also very interesting that you found the same kind of people because you said teachers from Georgia. So wow, how did that happen? Right? Like why only those? But still it's great and it also shows I would love to see schools done in agile way, just
Me
talking
too.
about that.
Me too. I actually, that's one of the paths that I tried to push down shortly after finding out that so many of the people that were listening to me fell into this sort of category is how can we do agility in the classroom? How can we improve
Mm,
experiences for students? But interestingly, like when I sort of went down that path, I found that for one, I didn't get as strong a response. Most of the teachers that were listening to me wanted to stop teaching rather than improve their classroom experience, right? They just wanted to leave and start doing this instead. And two, I didn't really have a lot of practical experience in this path. And so my thoughts were not as well fleshed out. So I think that points to another important thing about working on your personal brand, which is that it's okay to experiment as you start to get feedback from your audience that tells you why they listen to you. You can try new things, but you also don't have to follow everything to its natural end. You can pull back and say, oh, maybe this isn't a path for me, and go back to something that interests you more, better aligns with your audience.
That's actually a very good advice as well, because with in the previous episodes I was talking with Chris and with Maarten, and they both are sticking to their path because they
Mhm.
are just they found it and they are lucky. But not all of us are. I
Mhm.
talk about stuff and I talk about also a bit like you, like this is what I'm having problems with, so I will make a video about it because I know probably that's not the only team that struggles with this particular topic. And I think that's also good to know that, okay, for those who we don't have this one special thing, like Chris has retrospectives and Maarten has sprint goals, we can
Yeah.
still do this and we can see, but maybe we have to pivot and
Mhm.
find, or maybe that's our road. We will keep pivoting and finding what is interesting, or maybe at some point we will find this one special path
I think so. I
that
mean,
we
it
will
would be
just
lovely
stay.
to find like the thing I want to talk about for the rest of my life, but I don't think I have yet. Um,
Hmm.
Couple months ago, yeah, a few months ago, when I did switch jobs, it was really important to me that I put the majority of my focus on this new job. That meant that I had less time to spend creating new content, talking about the things that I wanted to talk about on
Hmm.
LinkedIn and on Substack. So I had to pull back some there, and I decided to make a pivot to change from my Scrumify brand to this other sort of thing where as I wanted to increase my own knowledge base because I'm going to be working with new teams in new situations and I wanted to have a broader base of knowledge, I just went searching for really high value articles online as they come out from a lot of other different agilists. And I changed my Substack to now just be aggregating those and trying to share them to the broader community. It's really easy to get stuck in the LinkedIn algorithm where people are talking about the same thing on all the threads, and it can take
Hmm.
months to stop talking about, is safe great or is safe the devil? Um, and I'm like, well, we probably could have handled this in maybe two articles, one that likes it and one that doesn't. So here's one that likes it and here's one that doesn't. Now let's talk about a bunch of other stuff.
So that's your pivot right now.
Yeah, right now I'm not writing that much myself at the moment, but
Hmm.
I'm still trying to find stuff that other brilliant minds are putting out there to share.
Which is great as well, because there's so much information, it's hard to find what really matters. So if somebody's doing this filtering out for you, I am appreciating it, because I'm also overwhelmed sometimes by the information that you can find.
Yeah, there's a lot, and not all of it is the best quality. But I mean, just recognize that you might be skipping the LinkedIn algorithm, but now I am your algorithm. So it's still a little biased. There's going to be stuff I liked.
Yeah, yeah, but still, it is a filter already that
Yeah.
without you we don't have, which I
Yeah.
think it's great. That was great. We are getting to the end of the conversation. I'm very happy to have you as one of my conversation pals here on Agile State of Mind.
Thanks, pal.
And yeah, I hope I will probably have another idea of a series, and we will see each other again. And if
That'd
you
be great.
have any topic that you would like to talk to me about, here I am. So just linked me in.
I will. I'll link you in.
Thank you. Bye
Thank you,
bye.
Maria. See you later.